Dear Bohdan Vitvitsky, thank you very much that you agreed for the short interview. I will ask you a couple of questions and would be very thankful for the short answers. So today you mentioned a lot about the rule of law. Thank you very much for this short presentation, very interesting and very fruitful. And the short answer to the question, please, does it work in Ukraine and what is the current situation?
Are you asking me whether there's a high level of rule of law in Ukraine today?
Yes.
I think that the answer is that unfortunately there is not, and I think unfortunately there is not a high level of understanding of what exactly rule of law is and how it should be attained. And I believe that that is due to the Soviet legacy, during which the legal system operated or functioned for very different purposes than those that legal systems function or the goals that they serve in most Western societies, not exclusively Western, but in all Western societies. That is to say, legal systems exist in Western societies in order to produce justice. They do so in very different ways. There's a difference between the common law system and the civil law system, but they strive to produce justice. I'm afraid that that's not at all what the Soviet legal system existed for. It was rather to help the state control its population. And therefore, because of this Soviet legacy, I believe that the legal system in Ukraine has a very difficult time achieving that which would generally be considered to be a rule of law state.
Thank you very much for your answer. And the next question, we are all aware of the anti-corruption project which you conducted and are very fascinated with your discovery of this topic, and your great professional area is this anti-corruption. So please, your short analysis of the corruption situation of Ukraine now and what reforms we should do.
Right. Well, I mean, I have not personally conducted any surveys relating to corruption, but many surveys were performed between 2007 and 2009 when I was in Ukraine, and all of the surveys showed that there was unfortunately a rather high level of corruption, again, as reported by surveys conducted throughout Ukraine. So that's the state of affairs, and I believe that there is no reason to question those surveys or question their accuracy or their validity. With respect to what ought to be done, there are many measures and many steps that can be adopted. For example, the proposed bills that the project on which I worked had proposed and were registered in the Rada would be valuable steps, but there are many more things that need to be done. And I think that Ukraine would do well, if there is political will, to look around at the rest of the world. And there is no need. We're not back in the Stone Age, where each of us has to invent fire by ourselves, or each of us has to invent the wheel by ourselves. Many countries have had corruption problems. Almost all countries have some corruption problems, and these countries have developed various mechanisms for dealing with corruption. So Ukraine does not exist by itself on some planet in outer space. Ukraine can look around to see what its neighbors have done, what other countries in Europe have done, what city-states such as Singapore and Hong Kong have done. Both of them managed to dramatically reduce corruption. We've just heard this evening about the successes that Georgia, a former Soviet state, has had in terms of reducing corruption. So Ukraine can learn a lot simply by looking to see what other countries have done to try to reduce corruption.
Yeah. Today we spoke a lot about the Georgian experience. So what lessons can Ukraine draw out from this experience, and whether we can implement them in Ukraine at least partly, or it should be the own way of Ukraine how to fight corruption?
No, there's no, there's no uniquely Ukrainian way of fighting corruption, just as there is no uniquely Georgian way of fighting corruption. Ukraine can learn a lot from the Georgian experience. Different countries have shown an ability to succeed in different aspects of fighting corruption. For example, again, the Georgians have done well, and Ukraine can and should learn from Georgia in terms of the kind of simplification of the bureaucratic regulations that existed in Georgia, in terms of increasing salaries for public servants, in terms of explaining to the public that corruption is not in their interest and it's not natural, and so on and so forth. And if Ukraine were to just follow the Georgian roadmap, that's not the only roadmap that's out there. But that would be helpful to Ukraine. And again, the Georgians did not invent any of these things. They learned from the Baltics, and the United States played a role in helping Georgia combat corruption and proposed various strategies and so on. Again, there are many models. There's no single model that's perfect. But yes, Ukraine can learn from Georgia. Ukraine can learn from the Baltic states. Ukraine can learn from what Poland did. Poland still has corruption, but it has much less than Ukraine has. So again, there are many different countries from which one can learn.
Thank you very much. And the last question, your evaluation, your idea of the conference in today's day and maybe the day tomorrow.
Well, we'll see what tomorrow's like. But I think thus far the conference has been wonderful. I think that Mr. Ihor Bohdan and his colleagues deserve a huge amount of praise for all the effort and energy that he and his colleagues have invested. It was a very long day, but most of the presentations were very well prepared. It was very interesting to learn, to listen to them, learn from them, and I think one of the things that was most encouraging is that there was a very mixed auditorium, and many of the people were young people, former alumni, or not former alumni, but alumni of the CUPP program. But there were also journalists from Ukraine. There were also some public intellectuals from Ukraine. There were some Western scholars and so on and so forth. So it was a very interesting mix of people, and that made the questions very interesting. But most importantly, most of the presentations were very good, in the sense that people invested a lot of time, effort, and energy and thought in providing a lot of information in a succinct fashion that was of interest.
Thank you very much for the interview and for your energy and presentation today.